The reason I wanted to write this book was because in 2010 this was the most extraordinary media event, not just in terms of those unprecedented revelations of a vast volume of classified secrets, but the actual WikiLeaks itself as a media entity was quite extraordinary. The charisma and the vision and the rather eccentric personality of Julian Assange himself, of course, but more as this phenomenal product of the internet era. So it was an absolutely irresistible subject that was stirring up debate around the world amongst politicians and journalists. WikiLeaks changed over time. It has quite a protean, shifting, dynamic existence. It's reinvented itself according to new circumstances and new claims that it's trying to make. So it started as a kind of hacktivist enterprise, a kind of a drop zone for people to dump their secrets on, but it turned into, if you like, a more traditional journalistic enterprise with the collateral murder video, and then through its collaboration with The Guardian, The New York Times and so on, it actually turned it into this kind of network journalism hybrid enterprise. Julian Assange, from the word go, has always been very clear that what he's trying to do with WikiLeaks is not in itself to be a sort of journalistic or transparency organisation. He wants to change things politically. He wants to attack the power of authorities like the American military by revealing the way they work, by exposing their secret information. So it's always been a political enterprise to try and disrupt power by revealing information. It was clear when Julian Assange and WikiLeaks began to work with mainstream media like The Guardian and The New York Times that at one level there was this dramatic personality clash between Assange and those editors. But there was a much more fundamental clash, I think, between the way that WikiLeaks works, but also its ethics and its editorial sense of its rights and responsibilities. WikiLeaks was much more careless about the risks both to itself but also to the people out there, the subjects of these leaks, than mainstream media. WikiLeaks didn't have the same calculation, it didn't have the same pressure from politicians or advertisers or even from its own team. It was able to take gargantuan risks that often upset and indeed angered the mainstream media partners they worked with. In the book, I try to separate out Julian Assange from WikiLeaks when you think about its significance. But it's impossible in a way because he was the founder, he is the editor-in-chief, he is very much somebody who has his own personal vision, his own driving character. And that has been the strength of WikiLeaks because he is extraordinarily committed and determined and in many ways something of a genius around network journalism. But he's also its weakness, that it depends on him, he makes mistakes, he angers people, he's not very good at sustainable collaboration, and ultimately, if he himself is made vulnerable, then WikiLeaks may also fail. I think WikiLeaks presents a number of challenges to mainstream journalism. Firstly, it was a giant wake-up call. Mainstream journalists like to say that they're there to hold power to account, they're there to reveal the truths that power doesn't want you to know. I think a lot of people would question how successful it's been at that recently. It was also a challenge, though, to say, gosh, look what people are doing with all this new technology, with this revolution in political communications. Shouldn't mainstream journalism be part of that new media revolution? It's not just about journalists exploiting the internet, it's about journalists being part of this whole social media, social network revolution in political communications. I think it's very debatable how much of a game changer in terms of international diplomacy or military strategy WikiLeaks was. You have to remember that even with those gargantuan leaks of 2010, that wasn't material that was top secret, it was classified, but most of it was relatively routine. It gave us a picture of how power operated, and it may in many ways at a local level have disrupted power, but overall I don't think it has had a profound impact, even in the short term, on the way that power operates, but it certainly has had an impact on the way that power thinks about information. I think the legacy of WikiLeaks is both curious and unknowable. There have been imitators, many of them unsuccessful. But I think in the end, its legacy may be more in its significance, what it tells us about the way that in this new media, this networked era, that there will spring up organisations which are very effective, which operate in different ways, but perhaps the nature of them, especially if they're outside the mainstream, is that they are transitory and that they will come along, have an impact, perhaps inspire other versions, but in themselves may not be sustainable.